Chapter. We're going to go for ask a couple people. Okay. What I'm going to do is tell them that I'd like for them to ask you questions while we have you here. So I made a disc film yet, and she was particularly interested in understanding white privilege, cognitive blindness around white privilege, and some of the experimental work we were doing on subtle racism and discrimination. Well, one of the reasons that this film fits so well in our social justice initiative is because of this idea that we don't do a particularly good job of building capacity in our students who are going on for careers of service ultimately. In many cases, they're going to be dealing with vulnerable populations, are going to be dealing with questions of inequality of all kinds, and we teach them how to do regression analysis, we teach them how to do cost-benefit analysis, but we really don't teach them how to analyze inequality, how to think and talk about racial justice and injustice. And so this was a real hole, we thought, in the way that we prepare our students. So myself and Dean Ellen Shaw at NYU at the Wagner School got together, and she said, my students, I feel the same way. And they're asking, what can we do, what can we do? So we've piloted this initial project. Presentation of the film today was one of the final pieces of our initial work, and now we're hopeful that we can get support to continue this work.
We also have to really question our assumptions that sort of undergird the work that we do. So to what extent do we have disgust for the people that we are saying that we're serving? To what extent do we really understand how the accumulation of head starts and advantage for some groups and the historical accumulation of disadvantage for other groups creates the conditions that we see today versus the assumption that those people just can't get it together.
I thought it was really interesting that your brother or cousin, whoever was the one who went to Harvard, I thought how interesting that he pulled himself up by bootstraps and all that, and we've got children who are fighting bullets and going to school without food, and and fighting to get into even someplace like UCLA, and they can't get in, but everyone at that table, as you broke bread, were privileged to go.
There's a great expression that one of our advisors shared with me, which is the idea that when the wind is at your back, you don't notice the wind, and when the wind is in your face, you notice the wind. So Jim was a prime example of I worked hard. I would have gotten into Harvard no matter what because I worked so hard. So when you have everything going for you, you think actually that it's just you getting you there, but you don't realize you're being supported by this whole system that's set up to work for you, versus when the obstacles are coming at you all the time.
I think I spent most of my life thinking about racism in terms of I need to understand what it's like for others. And I think that today might be the first day when I realize if you really want to understand racism, particularly as a white man, you need to understand how you benefit from it.
There's so many white people today who think that if they aren't intentionally racist, and if they have friends of color, that they're not racist, and then therefore that's the end of the story, and they don't need to be part of the solution. So I think what you're getting at is this idea of not only how are other people under benefiting, but how am I benefiting, and how does that mean I need to show up for this work when so many people don't show up simply by saying either I'm colorblind, I don't see race, so I'm good and I don't need to do anything else, or
we had a big decision to make around how it was going to be made and who was going to show up as the main characters in the film. And we contacted about 200 family members, and there were some family members, DeWolf descendants of color, who came forward, who wanted to go on this journey. And so then the question was, do we have a sort of an interracial group of family members? And we struggled with it, and we decided intentionally not to. And the reason we decided not to is because in this country, we had never seen an example of a family, a group of white people coming together and talking about these issues in an open-hearted way.
Slavery, so I know some people think like, never mind talking about the history, let's just talk about the present day equity issues, and that's a compelling argument as well. So, but I do tend to be a believer in the fact that we have to understand the roots of the inequality in order to really figure out what to prescribe today. So it's still really hard to get people to look at the idea of creating a truth and reconciliation process. It's actually looking at the question of reparations and possible remedies, and it doesn't draw any conclusions at the outset, but it invites Americans to be in a conversation about that, and with all the different types of definitions of reparations that you can have.
Our school seeks to continue conversations around issues of social justice. We hope to do more programming like this. We are trying desperately to find funding. So keep us on your list.